My name is Carolyn No. I am the main organizer for the Nerdy Girls Society, which is a local meetup group that coordinates all sorts of really awesome, fun activities for nerdy girls in our community. I'm also a brown coat, and by day I am also an informal science educator. I'm going to let the rest of my panelists talk, and then we're going to get started on our presentation for about 15 to 20 minutes. After that, we're going to take questions.
Hello. I didn't know if this was going to be on or not. My name is Andrea Taylor, but I prefer to go by Fox to anyone who wants to speak to me later. I am an illustrator by day, cosplayer, clearly. And yeah, I do a lot of other things, performance and whatnot like that.
Hi, I'm Amy Rickles. I'm a co-organizer of the Nerdy Girls Society. I'm a word nerd. I work in publishing. I'm a voracious reader. I'm a big fan of the science fiction and fantasy genres, as well as dystopia, zombies, and vampires.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mounty. I'm an actuary by day, so that makes me a math nerd for those of you that don't know what that is. I also am the treasurer of the St. Louis Nerdy Girls Society, and I love comic books.
Hi, I'm Samia. I'm a lifelong science lover. I'm currently employed as an educator at the St. Louis Science Center. Some of my fandoms include Star Trek, The Walking Dead, and Firefly. And maybe I want to be Jane Goodall or Star Trek captain when I grow up. I don't know.
All right, thank you, ladies. So we've chose this topic because it's really near and dear to our hearts. Most of us are both nerds and geeks, or interchangeably one or the other. And we've experienced personally some of these things and observed some of the things that we're going to talk about. And we hope to leave you guys with a message of hope at the end, so that there are ways that you can help contribute to some of the ongoing issues in geek culture that we encounter. We wanted to start out with just kind of a quick two definitions up there. I know it seems kind of silly, but sometimes people get tripped up on what we're really talking about here. So feminism isn't about women being better than men. It's more about just equality for everyone. That's what we're looking for. And then geek feminism specifically is looking at some of the key issues that women in geek and nerd cultures and spaces are really encountering on a daily basis and trying to combat some of those problems. So what are some of those issues that geek feminists are concerned with? We're going to talk about a couple of these. So representation of women in media, internet bullying. I think a lot of people have heard of the fake geek girl. Anybody heard of that before? Anybody been called a fake geek girl? Yeah, not cool, right? So a few other things, objectification, some other terms like explaining and white knighting have a lot to do with other people telling us what it means to be a feminist, those kinds of things. Tokenism and the Smurfette principle. There's only one Smurfette and a lot of dudes. So a lot of times women are in environments where they're the only one. They're the token woman. And then minority women environments. So a lot of women in tech and in some of the other sort of more geek-oriented careers find themselves one of the few women in their culture or their companies. Today we're talking about the first two, representation of women in media and internet bullying. Some of these things will actually incorporate a lot of the other issues that we're concerned about as well. So you're going to see that internet bullying may include some of that fake geek girl or slut-shaming. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the other key issues while we go through this as well. And then I'm going to turn it over to one of our panelists to talk about this slide.
So there's been a lot of discussion lately about women in the media, around on the internet and the news and whatnot. We're just going to look at a couple of litmus tests that you can use to kind of start a conversation about some of the issues that are out there. The first one is the Bechtel test. It originated in 1985, actually, and Alison Bechtel's comic strip called Dykes to Watch Out For. And she came up with a really just basic test that you can use to determine whether or not a movie is female friendly. The first one is that it has to have at least 2 named female characters in it. The second one is that they have to talk to each other. And the third one is that they have to talk to each other about something other than a man. It sounds pretty simple, but you would be surprised at what movies fail this test. So 2 examples that I love on here. I'll start with the second one because it's the easier one, Frozen. So you have Elsa and Anna, if you haven't seen the movie. They're the 2 main characters. They talk to each other all the time, and a lot of times it's about things other than a man, like snowmen, or opening up the doors to their village, and all kinds of stuff. So that one obviously passes. Then the second one is the Lego movie. This movie to me is kind of what the Bechdel test is all about, is that it kind of starts you thinking about how the movie represents female characters. So there's 2 named female characters in it. So the first one, it means Wildstyle and Princess Unikitty. They talk to each other once, and it's a 1-sentence conversation. It's not about a man, so it marginally passes. And then I started thinking about this movie and how it kind of represents the female character, Wildstyle. Whenever she's talking to Emmett, the main character, he just kind of zones out and just hears blah, blah, blah. So I kind of like, okay, well, it passes the Bechdel test, kind of. But it started me thinking about other ways in which this movie could have been maybe a little bit better in representing the female characters that are in it. So that's what this test is all about. Then this infographic came out a little while ago about the top 50 movies in 2013, the top 50 grossing movies in 2013, and whether or not they passed or failed the Bechdel test. And they actually found that the ones that passed made $4.2 billion, the ones that failed, $2.6 billion. So this kind of starts to get at that Hollywood stigma that female characters in movies don't make money at the box office. Well, obviously, in 2013 at least they did. And there was actually, I heard on NPR earlier this week about the website 538. They looked at movies from 1990 to today. They analyzed 1,600 films. And the median budget of the ones that passed the Bechdel test was lower, but they actually had a better return on investment. So again, starting to get at that Hollywood stigma that just because a movie has a strong female character or multiple female characters in it, it's not going to do well at the box office. This kind of starts to get at that. The next test is the representation test, and this just takes it and makes it even broader. So it's a more robust test. It doesn't look at just women, it looks at men, it looks at people with disabilities, it looks at race and LGBT issues. So you can take this and fill it out while you're watching the movie and start to have a dialogue and a thought process about how this movie is representative of the general population, the people that are going to see this movie. And does it treat those people with respect? Then the next one was created to look at comic books. Comics Alliance came up with this a couple weeks ago. It's called the Harvey Renee Index of Superhero Diversity. And it's named for Renee Montoya and Harvey Bullock. They are in the Gotham City Police Department. And Harvey is a straight, white, cisgender male, and Renee is a queer woman of color. So it looks and basically kind of puts people in those 2 groups, and it says, are these straight white men overrepresented? Well, in the 2010 census, those Harveys represented about 1/3 of the population, and that's actually dwindling. And so this doesn't just have to be applied to comic books; it can be applied across all media. And again, it's just to start a conversation. Comics Alliance looked at the current Marvel and DC books and tried to see how they fit into the general population. Did they have over or more or less Harveys? And it turns out that they had 46% were in the Harvey group. So again, it kind of starts to think about who are the people that are buying these comic books, how does it represent those people? shows two examples of this. Uncanny X-Men is a current Marvel comic book. It's actually overrepresentative of the general population. Cyclops is the main leader, and he's the only Harvey in the book. All the others are Renees. And it's kind of got me thinking about it. I love this comic book. It's a great comic book. I really suggest you check it out. But it's this one in particular, I had no idea until I saw this. Is it really doesn't deal with the fact. It doesn't bring out the fact that all these people aren't Harveys, per se. And then the next one is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's a comedy on Fox, and it's gotten a lot of praise for having a more realistic representation of the New York City Police Department than a lot of other cop shows. And it, as you can see, has around 29% Harveys, the rest are Renees. So, other resources that are out there, the Hawkeye Initiative is, it's just fun. I mean, it takes the ridiculous poses that women stand in comic books. My favorite is the boobs and the butt in the same pose, like that's somehow possible. And it takes Hawkeye and puts him in that pose, and so it just makes him look ridiculous. Women in Refrigerators was created. The idea was thought of by Gail Simone, a comic book writer. It's based on the name comes from a Green Lantern comic book where Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern, comes home to find his girlfriend killed and stuffed in a refrigerator. And so it's the idea that women are constantly used as a plot device. They're either killed, they're maimed, they're depowered, they're raped, just in order for the man's plot to move forward. So there's a list of all those out there. And again, it can be applied to all different kinds of media. And then Kate or Die is on Comics Alliance. If you haven't checked her stuff out, it's really good. She has a lot of really fun comics about women. They're all women-centered. They talk about fandom, media, etc., comics, everything. It's just fun. With that.
Okay, before we move on to the next section, I just wanted to see if any of our other panelists wanted to weigh in or had examples they wanted to really share about this particular series of slides.
I do have something I would like to weigh in on. The idea of women in refrigerators, I know there's a lot of gamers here as well as comic fans, but a video that had come up was done by Feminist Frequency, who covers a lot of game topics and how feminism relates to different games. And there has been some stuff going on around her as a persona, but the videos have been really good. And she covered a lot of different video games and how kind of the same idea, the ratios of them that dealt with women that were simply placed to be the damsel in distress or have something happen to them so that it would further the men's quest for, whatever his quest happened to be. And I think a really important thing to note is that feminism is not just about empowering women, it's also about empowering men, because it's not really fair to say that men are strictly driven by rage at their girlfriends being stuffed in refrigerators, that they can't have deeper thoughts, deeper emotions. And I think that's a lot of what people tend to overlook with the ideas of feminism, that, things being associated with women being frowned upon or being seen as bad is also not good for men who maybe don't want to have the societal pressure to not have emotions and, maybe want to knit or garden or do whatever it is that they want to do. So.
Okay, any other comments from the panel?
I'll add one more. Just another great resource that I've really appreciated. I don't know if anyone's seen the Tumblr Repair Her Armor. It's awesome. Some people have. Okay, cool. So anyway, it takes the idea of sexualization in armor and costuming and says, no, this is not empowerment. Yes, they're warriors, but this is not empowerment. This is over-sexualization. I mean, are you going to go to battle in your underwear? You're probably going to get an arrow somewhere. So they take the traditional armor that women are drawn in and redraw it and make it a little bit more fitting, a little bit more actually protective. So another good resource out there.
All right, on to our next section on internet bullying.
Okay, so I call this one No Girls Allowed because bullying is pretty much just a means to exclude women from the geek community, in this context. I found the stopbullying.gov website, which is really a lot about bullying with children, but I felt like they had a really good definition of what bullying is. So it's basically unwanted aggressive behavior that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. So some of the forms of bullying in the geek community, fake geek girls, slut-shaming, some of the stuff we brought up already, appearance shaming about people's size or attractiveness, belittling and personal attack. This is about someone's knowledge or likes and dislikes, so it becomes an attack about that person personally, like you're a girl so you can't know as much as me, or that sort of thing, instead of actually addressing whatever topic it is you're talking about and the merits of that topic. And then there's a lot of backlash when women draw attention to issues of sexism and things like what backlash if they report being assaulted or harassed and things like that. And then there's also harassment, which can be sexual, and this creepers term comes up a lot. And it also can be non-sexual, such as just physical threats that are, harming someone.
And the picture that's up there is, it's a sort of red card, yellow card, green card for different things that might happen at a comic convention like this. So a red card is telling you like, hey, you just did something that's not okay with me and you need to stop right now. A yellow card is just a warning, and a green card is actually a thank you. So it kind of covers all spectrums of, harassment and also empowerment.
And even though a lot of, we're focusing on internet bullying, so, this happens a lot in online communities and comments and posts and things on web pages and blogs and all that kind of stuff. But obviously this stuff also can happen, in person. So here's some examples. So the, first is a meme that it's like, here's this woman who did this fantastic Thor costume. And instead of her, getting positive feedback for that, then it's like we have to slut shame her essentially because she's wearing a bikini top, I guess. And the one underneath, there's this girl, Caitlin, who she dressed up as Lara Croft, and the picture, I guess she posted it on her Facebook and it went viral. And she got a ridiculous amount of negative feedback about her size. And people saying really horrible things to her, and she wrote a really interesting article about it, which I put the link to the article on there, basically saying, everybody should be able to do what makes them happy, essentially. And then I found a lot of good comic examples of the difference between how women are treated and men are treated, and the idea that a woman can't just wear a shirt because she likes it, but she has to somehow prove that she's worthy of wearing the shirt because she has the knowledge that goes, with whatever character that is. And there are a lot of examples. I found a lot more. I had a really hard time narrowing it down to just 3. So this is out there a lot. So basically the effect of this is that it stifles women's voices because women are then afraid to share in communities or share online because of the reaction they may get. It perpetuates sexism, stereotypes, and misinformation, and it creates an unsafe environment for women. So, all of it, obviously, if you go back to that original No Girls Allowed, the ultimate result is that it keeps women from participating in these communities, which is detrimental to both women and men because, then men aren't getting to hear the women's side of it either. And then I put a quote there that I thought was really interesting, and it's not just about, obviously about geek community, but just in general, that essentially if you're a woman with an internet presence, you need to have a thick skin because, people are going to be saying really mean things to you, essentially. So these are some things that we can do about this. Give support, so encourage women, listen and believe them when they share their experiences instead of just saying, oh, that couldn't have happened. I thought an interesting example was there was a writer who was sexually harassed at a conference by an editor from Tor, And I actually, when I was researching that and reading more about what happened to her, I found a blog that people, a lot of men were commenting and saying, oh, she's unattractive, so there's no way this happened, she's just making it up, and things like that. And you know, when she started telling people, a lot of people didn't believe her at first. So it's really important to just believe that, you know, this is a really uncomfortable thing for women, and a lot of times, unless, you know, it's unlikely that they're going to be coming forward unless something actually happened. So just offering support and believing them is really important. Then also being aware, recognizing your own and others' behavior. Sometimes we all do things that we don't even think about, or say things and don't realize that it actually could be, you know, one of the things that we've talked about here today. And it's important to just be able to recognize it when you do it, and that leads to changing the behavior, or maybe, you know, apologizing to someone or that sort of thing. And also being aware when you see other people doing this. So it's important to, I put the step up, call out. Basically, don't let it continue. If you see it, don't be afraid to step up, support people. You know, let them know you're there, and let other people know that it's not okay. And then having courage. So whenever possible, don't let fear keep you from participating in the communities or sharing your thoughts or opinions. Because the more people that are willing to do it, the more women that are willing to say, hey, this isn't okay, and you know, then the more that more of us will be able to continue to do it and increase our presence in the community.
And then our last slide is actually on Twitter feminism, which is becoming sort of a hot topic. Some of these tweets or hashtags are a little bit controversial, but they really get to the point that women can actually have a really strong presence online and make a difference. So a lot of these hashtags were trending. My favorite is edgy headlines, which you can Google. You get some pretty hilarious results for that. So the point is that we get these edgy headlines about women, like why aren't women having babies, and can women have it all, career and children and all of that stuff. So the edgy headlines flips it on its head and says, why aren't men having children? Can men have it all, have children, have a career, be beautiful? So if you really want a good giggle, I would highly recommend checking out edgy headlines. The main reason I put this up here is because there hasn't been a lot of activity with Twitter feminism in geek communities necessarily quite yet, but I think it's a really great forum for us as geek women who are online, who are involved in fandoms, often in online communities. We can really take action using Twitter. I'm going to leave you guys with this last slide, which is about Nerdy Girl Society and how you can get a little bit more involved. Even if you're not from the St. Louis area, we are trying to branch out to other chapters as well, so just a little plug for us at the end. I don't know how we want to do this. We have a microphone in the back over there, so I think if you have questions, it's probably a good idea to use the microphone, maybe line up back there so that we can actually hear you and people in the back can hear you. Does that sound good to everyone? Alrighty. So, any questions, go ahead and line up at the mic. All right, go for it.
Hello. Well, it's not so much a question, but it was an observation that I had. Walking through here, I see a lot of male artists with amazing pictures, wonderful renditions, and the imagery that I see more often, I mean, they're creating imagery for the LGBT, you know, female, male. I was looking at this wonderful rendition of Wonder Woman, and I cannot recall a picture drawn by an artist, other than in the comic book itself, where Wonder Woman is actually saving a man. You know, he's in her arms, she's flying away. You see the woman ornamental in the men's structure, you know, and look, and I mean, we're seeing the imagery coming through with the LGBT, but you're not seeing the female superhero other than in standing fighting pose or being the Playboy Bunny rendition. And I was wondering if you had commentary on that, because I don't see that imagery.
So you should check out Brian Arizello and Cliff Chiang. their comic book Wonder Woman right now is amazing. She is kind of flips it on her head. She's more of a Greek god now, but the way that they draw her, she is so powerful in this one. And there are times where she steps in and kind of swoops in and saves the man. Orion, I think specifically, she steps in and saves him at one point. But that comic, it's actually, they're coming off the comic, I think, fairly soon, maybe this summer. But pick it up and trade, it's amazing. They're not here today at Comic-Con, but definitely support their work. There are other comics out there, like Hawkeye is one that's amazing right now, and there's actually two Hawkeyes. There's the male Hawkeye, and then Clint Barton, and then there's the female Hawkeye, Kate, and she kind of has her own sort of off take on that, and she has her own sort of issues every once in a while, and she's amazing. She's drawn as like a strong female character. She doesn't need anybody to come in and save her, and in fact, she actually spoiler alert, sorry. It's good. I would recommend it. They're out there, but they're hard to find. But they're out there, though. Yeah.
Actually, one of the earlier Nerdy Girl events that we had was we went and saw, I think it was, remember PBS? Has posted that? It was at the Natural History Museum, but it was a documentary about Wonder Woman. And it was really interesting to watch kind of her evolution from when she was first created, almost as a lens through which to view feminism and different things of that nature. She, from what I recall, like some of the very early ones, she'd actually been in, I don't want to say more of a masculine role, but saving men, saving women, you know, and more of these things. And then as it progressed, she actually got to a point, I forget which decade it was, when she was like a fashion salesperson for a little while before she actually came back into her glorious, wonderful self. But it's a really interesting video, and it was put on by PBS, I believe.
I think it aired on PBS. Yeah, they have a series at the History Museum of documentaries that are on PBS, and so they had it there. So it's possible that it may come back.
I never really appreciated Wonder Woman before that, but it gave me I really started to like her after having watched this.
And then I'll just do a plug for Star Clipper in St. Louis. They actually have a ladies' night coming up next Saturday. So if you're in town, go check it out. They have all artists, all female artists and writers, and it's nice to go out and like say like, hey, there actually are women out there creating comics.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
You want to plug anybody else for us? Yeah, I was just curious. Are you guys familiar at all with costumes or not consent? Okay, and I noticed you didn't mention it up there, but I was curious as to your opinion on that, and at the same time, why the logo for costumes or not consent is a sexy-looking silhouette of a woman.
So, I mean, clearly there are additional issues that we didn't get to cover. So we are really familiar with costumes or not consent. So what do you mean by what is our opinion on like their mission or what?
Not them exactly, but the fact that they actually had to come out with the fact that, you know, they actually had to come out and say, look, costumes are not consent.
Okay. Go for guys.
Like, it was such a big deal they actually had to make a movement about it.
I'll grab this one, just kind of on a tangent. Is anybody familiar with Mandy Caruso? Yeah. She cosplayed as Black Cat at New York Comic Con 2 years ago, and a man interviewed her, and he gets her ready in front of this audience and says, oh hey, let me ask you a very important question. What's your cup size? And she actually tells him that's none of his business, and he keeps persisting. Okay, she came out in her blog and said, yes, it had a fair amount of cleavage, but that gives you no right to put me out on the internet. That's intimate knowledge. Don't make it public. What it comes down to, essentially, sexy icon or not, is we can dress how we want, and that doesn't mean I'm asking for it.
You know, I think that women, we have every right to dress sexy if we want to. I mean, just because people are going to be feminists doesn't mean we have to wear like a paper sack or anything, you know, and I think a lot of it's also about just respecting individual boundaries. You know, if you go up to somebody and just like grope them or something, clearly that is not going to be an acceptable behavior. you know, and then certain people are going to be comfortable with different things, you know, but I found, at least for myself and those close to me who do a lot of cosplay, like, I do want people to see me, like, I put a lot of effort into this, like, feel free to, you know, but it's important to know that that's also not an open invitation for anything that you would not feel comfortable saying to somebody on the street. You know, you probably wouldn't ask a cup size of somebody just walking around.
Hi there. Okay, so there's this video game series called Mass Effect, and you get to play as a male or a female character, and a lot of people say that the female character is much more, the female version of the character is much more interesting than the male, but for some reason the game companies always will market it towards a male audience. I was wondering if you had an opinion on that.
Yeah, so that seems to be a consistent problem with a lot of marketing of video games, of movies, of TV shows, of just about anything. I mean, clearly you can see there are a ton of geek women in this room right now. We make up a huge portion of the market share, but somehow there's still this perception that only men play video games, only men go to big action movies, only men want to see, you know, or only read comic books. And so oftentimes a lot of those materials are actually marketed directly to men. You know, part of the solution is we can use our paychecks and our money to decide what we're going to buy and, you know, really talk with our dollars. The other thing is to get more women involved in those mediums. So getting more women into game design, into comic book design, into movie production and that kind of thing. I don't know if anyone else has some comments.
I think that getting women into the production part of it is important. That's what the blog 538 that I talked about, that article that they wrote, they interviewed a lot of movie executives, and this I'm sure applies to video games as well. It's just that whenever you have a female driving, writing, directing, doing production, anything involved in the making of that movie, there's more likely going to be female characters in that movie. So getting females into those industries, I think, is important.
Thank you.
Hi. Earlier you put up a bunch of resources and online things that we can go to that just kind of talk about feminism in geek culture. I was wondering if you guys had heard of a Tumblr, I believe it is, called Escher Girls. Anybody heard of that? It's really cool. What they do is they take basically very anatomically incorrect pictures from comic books and video games and all sorts of other mediums and redraw them to make them more physically and anatomically possible. I think that kind of brings attention to the next thing I want to talk about, which is, I guess, what we as fans more specifically can do to, I suppose, fix our physical representation in various mediums. Like, for instance, when New 52 came out, I was so super stoked because I finally had a good jumping in point for one of my favorite heroes, Catwoman, and I was so super stoked, and Judd Winick was, not Judd Winick, he was writing, but he wasn't doing the art. That was Leon Marsh, I believe is his name, March. He's a fantastic artist, but he has this terrible tendency to incorporate a lot of cheesecake, I suppose, it's a very old term. Physically impossible, but I suppose a little pornographic positioning and proportioning into his work, and it kind of gets under my skin that I can't enjoy my own comics without feeling like I'm having a bunch of basically objectification thrown at me.
Yeah, that's really tough, especially when like something's already been produced, you know, and you've got your comic and you're like, wow, this is completely disappointing. I can't believe I just spent money on this, but I really, really want to read it. I think the last slide that I showed was the Twitter feminism. You'd be really surprised how effective that can be. The misrepresentation it switched over to just the representation project because they're also looking at hyper-masculinity and like what that does to our culture as well. But they use a hashtag called not buying it. and it actually brings a lot of attention. I think they have an app now too, which is really cool. So you say like, I got this, it has all of these problems, hashtag not buying it, and then other people get to see like, here's this problem. They've had that hashtag trending for quite a long time, and they got GoDaddy to change some of their practices. I don't know if you guys saw some of the really horrific advertising they had. And then just some other examples of some positive effects from Twitter. I think it was Honeymaid just released like a really cool video where they got all of these horrible comments about this really wonderful representative of all families commercial that they put out. They got all these horrible comments, and they had some artists make it spell the word love with the paper, like just the word, and then they demonstrated how many positive comments they got and surrounded that word, love, and it was just kind of a really powerful clip, but it was all an effect of people speaking up on the internet and saying, this is not acceptable, and we're going to tell you why.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think speaking up and being vocal and showing people that produce games and comic books that's not what we want to see. You know, there's a lot of women and men who don't want to see women put in these positions, who want to see men put in better positions as well. And I think it's important that people hear that we're not really going to accept that.
And I think too, to speak to your example with the Catwoman and the comic, the thing, I'm all for a little bit of cheesecake. I mean, a little cheesecake never hurt anybody. But the problem I had with it was that your first introduction to Catwoman is 3 panels of her boobs. Like, boob, boob, boob. Before you even see her face or anything that she's doing. And that was just kind of disappointing to me. So what I've actually learned, I actually started reading comics when the New 52 came out, and that was one of the first ones I dropped, and stuck with Brian Arzel's Wonder Woman. But the thing that I've learned is to follow the creators. Don't follow the characters. Follow the creators that you know will do justice to whatever character they are given.
Thank you very much.
Hello. I got here a little late, so if this was already covered, I'm sorry, I'll just drop the question. But how familiar are you guys with the practice of women who are into the quote-unquote nerd culture of games and comics, not necessarily posing online as men, but purposely making gender vaguely known or just not ever expressing the fact that they are female so as to avoid being picked on? And what do you think can be done to stop people from being embarrassed to admit, you know, who they really are?
As a gamer, when I play, I generally will, like, people will call me bro and dude and stuff like that, and I won't really go out of my way to correct them. Because there is a lot of stigma for some reason. I would just like to point out, I have owned all of the Nintendo systems when they first came out. Like, I've been, you know, around the block as far as gaming is concerned. But I think what really needs to happen is, if you're a male and you see this happening online or on gaming or however you happen to be doing it, speak up. Just make it known that that's not okay with you. Like, it's not socially acceptable in the male circles to be behaving this way. You know, because there's only so much that guys who have this in their mind are going to listen to the women being like, hey, cut it out, you know. Like, I think it's really important for peers to step in and be like, hey, look, like, that's not cool. You know, and only from that end will it really start to be able to change in forms like that.
I'll agree with that, what Fox said, but I'll also throw in that, interestingly enough, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day. She's a very big gamer, and she pointed out that a lot of it tends to be demographics. For example, she does EverQuest a lot, and when she's outed as a woman there, people tend to be kind of white-knight about it. Oh, let me give you things, let me do this. But should she be on Call of Duty and pick up a headset, all of a sudden you're getting comments, get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. And what she thinks, and what I tend to agree with, surprisingly, your EverQuest audience tends to be older. They tend to have more social interaction. Your Call of Duty tends to be younger people, teens. Not to belittle the teens, but I want to say a lot of it is, okay, they're young, they don't know how to act around people, and they have that aspect of anonymity, and they're just taking with it and running with it. Probably, like Fox said, stand up, say, hey, that's not cool, that's not appropriate. But yeah, it is interesting to point out the demographic aspect, I do think.
Thank you.
We have about 5 minutes, so we can probably take maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Or we can do like speed round.
Mine isn't really a question, it's more along the lines of a statement. I'm a disabled veteran, and Kaylee is my caregiver and my fiance. And she's the biggest nerd that I know. I mean, we had to get this today so that way I could get around the convention center, because otherwise my knee is really shaky and gives out. And she gripes a little bit about it, but she's fantastic. And she's a nerd, and she doesn't care who knows it or anything. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
That's one thing I think is interesting too, is that generally, well, I would go as far as say 100% of the males that will tend to discriminate or bully against females are going to have women in their life. Like, they're not existing in some sort of womanless bubble. So it's always interesting to me to think like how they in person treat these women, like mothers, sisters, anything like that, significant others. You know, and I think the internet has a lot to do with people getting used to the idea of just being able to say whatever and not really filter that. So.
You were talking about the Bechdel test earlier, and I was wondering, can you recommend any sci-fi or fantasy TV shows that you think passed the Bechdel test?
Firefly.
Anything newer than that? Because like I was thinking about Continuum, and I really like some of the stronger characters there. But I was looking at the Bechdel test, and I'm like, I don't think it passes at all, because when the women talk, they're always talking about one or two male characters. So
I would say Lost Girl probably passes that test.
Cool. Thanks for your suggestion.
Can you comment on the apparent dichotomy that, at least I've noticed, in strong female comic book characters between the She-Hulk types who are just as strong as men and can pound people into the pavement, and the Catwoman types who use their feminine wiles to seduce their way out of a sticky situation?
Well, it's interesting that you draw that there's only those 2 types. So what does that really say about, you know, the comic book writing that's out there? Obviously, you know, you want women to have just as robust and interesting a storyline as men. I think a really good way to think about it is you've got your character, maybe it's already a man, make it a woman. Probably going to be really interesting story too. I don't know.
And I've noticed a lot of female gag characters like Squirrel Girl, who apparently has beat out pretty much the entire Marvel universe, and Power Girl, whose most outstanding feature are her 2 most outstanding features.
Well, I would say I would go back to what I said earlier about follow the creator. Because there have been people like with Power Girl that have made amazing Power Girl comics. Particularly Amanda Conner, she's an amazing female artist who, when she draws Power Girl, man, I want to be Power Girl. Like, she is strong and she's tough and she can kick anybody's butt. And so I go back to just follow the characters, and there's been a lot of really, really good creators and artists, particularly coming out of Marvel and out of Image right now. Image is killing it right now. So check out some of those. Yeah. Saga is, oh my god.
Did she do the boob window?
Power Girl artist you mentioned, does she do the boob window on the costume?
No, they all have the boob window.
Okay.
Yeah, can't get away from that.
Okay, unfortunately, we just got the sign to stop. I'm really sorry to my poor boyfriend who is all the way here from Tennessee. I really appreciate him coming. Thank you guys for coming.